All right.
Yeah.
So what do you need the most help with in this class right now? Time.
Time management.
Time again, more time.
Yeah.
What about, is it?
Word when you get home at like 6:30 and then you finish those assignments, but then the next ones aren't, you haven't looked at them yet until the next night, you know?
We do have I mean, the goal is to get through those quickly so you have more time to focus on the exams and stuff, but we can overlap some of that if we need to. So don't die between now and then, but just keep me posted if you need an extension, we can work on that or something. All right. So of the assignments, rate how comfortable you were on the material in each of those. Medical term looks like we're fairly comfortable with. I mean, not great, but more. Using abbreviations, yeah, that's really kind of crazy. Stuff you really just know or don't. ICF case, yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? As far as that all goes. That's not something we normally do in athletic training, but that's very much the future of medicine all the way around, as we'll see more as we go through this course. More of that ICF stuff is just the structure of the course or of all of medicine. So athletic training is going to have to follow that as well. So it's not something that you will be comfortable with until you use it a lot, obviously. But hopefully some introductions, and then the other ones there, the history and the systems review. These are just going to be things to try to get you more familiar, more comfortable with those aspects. So as long as you're growing in that area, I'm okay with that. These are not going to be tested materials. So I'm okay with it being a little bit on the lower side. We'd obviously like to bump that up. If you need help with any of that material that you're struggling to figure out, just let me know and we can talk through it as well. We just won't invite mock. That was a joke for the people that were there last night. All right. What questions did you have on video lesson number 1 that you put on Flip Class 1? Anyone have any questions?
That's pretty straightforward.
Cool. That works out well then. So let's do a few questions then. What is the first step of evidence-based practice? So this is the stuff that, these course topics are similar things that you'll have tests on. So these questions aren't necessarily designed to replicate the test, but to spur discussion, but they're similar in nature. Anyone else have any answers? Let's see how we did. Oh, look. You guys are smarter than you look. But obviously, these are the steps in order with that. So create a clinically relevant and searchable question, conduct a database search, critically appraise the articles, critically synthesize the articles, and then assess the outcomes are the 5 steps of evidence-based practice. And so throughout this course, we will spend time working through each of these steps as well as sub-steps within them. So here's an open-ended question. How do you use patient values in evidence-based practice? Very carefully. I like that. You can just answer out loud too if you're not on there. How would you use patient values in evidence-based practice? First off, I guess, what are patient values in evidence-based practice? Anyone? You can just answer out loud. Anybody want to define this? Are you guys asleep or waiting for me to answer?
Both.
You can't be embarrassed around each other still.
Or
Kelly. Everyone's like. So, what are the 3 components of evidence-based practice? This you should know.
like the purpose of it, or like,
Nope, there's 3 components.
oh,
1 is patient values.
oh, shoot, oh.
1 is evidence, right? What's the 3rd? There are 3 people, or there are 2 people involved in the treatment plan, right?
Oh, isn't it like
Okay.
clinical or clinician?
Clinician expertise, exactly. Right, so you have, so when you're thinking of evidence-based practice, you very much have to think about it as the blend of all of these together, right? So we talk about the evidence, but that's part of the reason why I want to include, you know, the documentation stuff in here, as well as some of these discussions, because it doesn't really matter if the evidence says you should do X treatment if you have no idea how to do that treatment, right? And if you've had really good luck with Y treatment, then, you know, it would make sense for you to use it. So then comes the 3rd, patient values. Where do we include patient values then? How would you define patient values? Just think of it to yourself for a second. So the way that I would describe patient values simply is it's just what's important to the patient. It's the whole idea of patient-centered care. Now, in athletic training, we tend to be pretty good at patient values only because we know our patients very well, not because we ask them. Compared to a lot of medical providers, we're really good at the fact and understanding that like return to play is just as important to our patients as long-term health. Telling an athlete just to rest for 2 weeks and it'll get better is usually not something for us. So in answer to the question, how do you use patient values in evidence-based practice? The answer is pretty simple. You ask the patient what's important to them and you work to make improvements in that area. For us, most of the time, the thing is to return to play. So that's relatively easy. But that's not always the case. You know, I'm sure we've had patients whose goals may not be quickest return to play. Maybe they have professional aspirations afterwards. Maybe they just are struggling or whatever, and so they are not very motivated to return to play quickly. Those sorts of things. Maybe their real, passion is strength training, and so they want to get back to strength training. Whether or not they ever swim again or not is irrelevant to them. So we do evidence-based practice there. We have to start first and foremost with making sure that we're working towards the goals of the patient. And that's where, things like the ICF really come into play, right? The ICF focuses on the patient as much larger than just their disease. So we will spend a lot of time in this class focusing on the evidence because that is obviously the new part of evidence-based practice. But don't ever forget this important aspect of patient values, and that's part of the reason why we're doing the documentation, because if we do this documentation right, as well as we have a unit on patient-oriented outcomes, we should be able to balance this. Any questions on that? So we only had one video lesson this week, so there's not as many of these, but the format of this will be relatively similar week to week. Start off with any questions just about anything, ask for specific question, or I'll ask you what you need the most help with. Then we will go into what was next? Questions from the flipped class thing. You can submit those so we can talk about it. We'll do a couple of multiple choice and open-ended questions. Then we will move on to just last questions and the next projects. So these are the next assignments that you have due between now and when we meet again. So how comfortable are you in your ability to perform these next assignments? And you can just rate that.
Are they just like the ones due on Tuesday or what?
The ones due either Friday or Monday or today. Today, Monday or Friday.
Maybe. The internet connection is offline.
So it looks like most people, or I guess this is one person. One person is comfortable.
Good for them.
Yeah, two people. Are there any, at this point, is most of our discomfort associated with just the content or the process? Like, would it be helpful to go through some of the content now? Or is this something that would be better done at a later time once you've had some more time to look at
What do you mean by content?
like we did last night, like what is it asking for? I'm not sure what this means.
Because I feel like you have to get the content down before you get the process down.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that, there's a decent level of anxiety just because of the amount of time that these assignments take. And so I'm wondering, are some of these numbers skewed more towards the left because we're worried about time, or are we worried about, I have no idea what I'm doing?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, I've just never done it before.
Yeah. So would it be helpful to go over some of those right now, or is that something that would be better done, I don't know, whenever? Tonight, tomorrow night?
Well, I have to work tonight. So that's part of the time thing.
Yeah.
What if we like reviewed some of it, like the upcoming stuff, like on the Tuesday before it's due? So like if we look ahead to say like, oh, we're doing like the history stuff, like due Wednesday or something, we could just be like, any questions about that?
Yeah, I can bring those up.
So I think what was like most of the time was like reading all the chapter and like trying to figure out all the content and then doing it. So like having a better base of it before doing it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
And then you guys saw that at midnight, right after they're due, the answer keys come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I'm just going to be grading these based off of completion. And then you can go through and answer any questions.
Okay.
Because as is typical with these sorts of things, right? I want to show you and give you a little bit of practice with the standard, knowing that you're going to probably backtrack it a little bit and forget a lot of it. But as I'm sure, Catherine was talking about last night, right? She sees a lot of this sort of crazy not crazy documentation, but it's crazy from our stand. This is normal for PTs, right?
Well, at the computer, they just click buttons and it does it for them.
Yeah.
How do we get that?
Well, I mean, like a lot of it, the question comes from the standpoint of, I don't think I've passed it yet. Anybody know what page number the first one is?
From
Versus-
last night?
We already did this one, right?
That
Writing
wasn't-
subjective, including review of systems? Or is that the first one?
I don't remember that one.
It was like the history that we've done, and then like
So this is, I think, the first one here. So remember, when we come to the subjective portion of an evaluation, it's more than just the history, right? HOPS is a great tool to help you think about doing an evaluation. It's a horrible tool when it comes to a comprehensive evaluation, because HOPS does not cover, half of the stuff that you actually need to do in an evaluation, right? HOPS is the cheat version, right? So when you think of SOAP and the subjective, it's more than just the history. It's the patient demographics, right? It is the problem statement. It is also the history, but remember, it's not just history of the injury, but it is medical history as well, right? So this is everything. When you think of subjective and that portion, history is a tiny component. The subjective comes from everything that you get from the patient. So for this first worksheet here, they're asking you in part 1 to differentiate between subjective portion and problem statement portion. The problem statement is that patient values portion of the subjective. When I ask the patient, what's important to you? What goals do you want to get to? What can't you do that you wish you could? Those are all problems that need to be addressed. Right? So when you look here at some of these subjective portions and things, you need to differentiate between things like, allergies, which goes through, and tenderness to palpation with pain, right? Tenderness to palpation is problem. Allergies is subjective. And so like Catherine said, most of the time with these things, to make it more comprehensive, there's just buttons that you would be pushing for these with that. But you have to remember to have asked them these things first, which is why you're going through this. Here you have the different components of the subjective. So if HOPS included every aspect in there, this would now be the acronym for within the history component. It then asks you to relate these to these statements. All right. Medical history, demographic information, current conditions, recent or past surgicals, past medical history, medical test results, meds, current condition or chief concern, prior condition, level of function, patient goals, social history, employment status, physical environment and available resources, general health status, social health habits, growth and development, family health history. Now, the important thing with this is that although this asks, and it looks very much like a quiz, right? Where you're selecting. Remember, that's not how we're using it. That's not how we're grading it. And it's not really that important. Like Catherine said, the computer or something will actually put these in the right things. What we want to do, and the reason why I assigned part 2 as well as part 1, is not to test, gosh, you know, do you really know if right-handed is demographic information or medical diagnosis information, right? If you put it in one versus the other, it doesn't really matter. The reason that I'm having you do this is to think about the fact that they are right-handed is in fact part of their medical documentation. In athletic training, we document by exclusion. And what that means is we document only what is relevant and exclude everything else. Most medical providers document through inclusion. They include everything and then just highlight the rest. That's why every single time, you know, you go into the doctor's office, the nurse or somebody comes in and asks you, has there been any changes to any of the forms that you filled out? Are you still taking this medication? Are you still doing this? Are you still doing that? Right? Most of the time it's not relevant to our things because, you know, most of the time we're not dealing with those sorts of aspects, but all of these things could be relevant to their patients. Right? And you think about that, right? When there's a concussion, you ask about roommates and stuff, right? Is there going to be somebody around, right? In case, you know, you take a turn for the worst. Well, that's relevant healthcare information, right? It's always relative healthcare information. We just may not need it. Okay, more of the same here as far as part of section 1. We have more things which go in the subjective, which go in the problem statement with there. So you should be able to bust through that relatively quickly. For the problem, then they have the letters associated, so you're just combining them. So this has problem and subjective, you're combining them. Again, go through, read them, read these categories, see which one it makes most sense. You probably have read through. If you don't know anything about what goes in employment status, well, then, you know, you're obviously not Marissa and Jeremiah, because I think employment status is high on their mind right now, which works out. And, you know, that's important as well. But that's the sorts of stuff that, right, comes into play. I mean, the same way it's important for me to understand that you guys are working and be comfortable and cognizant of that. You know, let's assume that Marissa and Jeremiah, just because, you know, we're using them, let's say that they have a stress fracture, right? Ideally, we would have them rest, you know, they have a metatarsal stress fracture. If we know that they work and they're on their feet that much, we need to account for that in our plan of care. We can't stress that bone as much because they're doing that. Like, you know, I mean, in that case, maybe a bone stimulator would not be that appropriate because the bone stimulator works on the fact that it does low-level forces to the bone. Well, they're already giving high-level forces and we can't do anything about that, right? So we don't need to add more forces to them. So again, you shouldn't need to take a lot of time with this section. Read it, know these aspects, know kind of what sort of things can go in there. That's all I'm looking for, right? Then when you get down to part 4, this is now just the same thing as you've been doing. Go through, treat these all the same as part 3. Then once you've gone through and said this is a problem statement and it is this subsection, put all of those together and that becomes your note. Okay. And so to be honest, you know, like if it takes you a ton of time to like write these out, right? You know, like you're just copying them and writing them out, just number them. This is statement 1, this is statement 2, this is statement 3, this is statement 4, this is statement 5, right? And then just put them, okay, for my note in subjective, it's going to go statement 4, then 1, then 7, then 6, then whatever, right? That's the only goal, is to organize your notes into a readable format. That's what the computer does for them when you do an EMR. If you actually needed a note, it would put it in some sort of order for you. Now, in reality, in most days today, nobody actually reads the note. They read off of the check boxes. But you still need the ability to write that note, because until everybody has access to those EMRs, sometimes you need to send an actual letter. Okay. Does that make it the assignment any easier, hopefully?
Yeah.
Most of these are just that. They're going to be you going through, looking at them and starting to figure out these are different components of the a documentation system, right? What sort of things go in each one? That's what we're trying to figure out. Because after we do all of these boring ass worksheets, I'm going to ask you to do 2 complete SOAP notes using this format on 2 patients that you are working with. And you will write it up like you write up those different sections. So let's go back here to objective here, right? And they have objective including system reviews. So we have system review. This is basically where now you are evaluating a large system. You know, I mean, think of the system review from previously, right? They had these checklist things, right? The easier way, I guess, to think about this would be, is this something you would learn in eval class? Or is this something that you would talk more about in Gen Med class? Right? So if it's more Gen Med, it's probably going to be in the system review stuff. If it is more eval class, it's in tests and measures. Okay. Here's your systems and the things that go on the systems review as well. So you can just look at that. Same sort of assignment, same aspects in there. All right. Let's do one more and see what we got here. History systems reviews, tests and measures. So yeah, now oh, this is a review worksheet. I don't know if I assigned this, but it's the same components that you just did, all those aspects. All right.
Mhm.
Questions?
Does it really take 1,000 ankle tapes to prevent one ankle sprain?
Depending on if they've ever sprained their ankle before or not. I believe it's around 300 for people that have a history of ankle sprains within the last year. And yeah, I believe it's up over 1,000 for people who have never sprained their ankle before.
Jeremiah wanted me to ask that.
Questions on the semester project? And I will have these slides just because for some people, you know, if you don't want to ask the question in front of everybody, you can just type it in here, in there.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
And then we will always end with a section where I ask you to rate your level of comfort on the different assignments, ask for questions on the assignments, and then we will end with ask me anything. Your hair looks really long from this angle, Kelly.
I actually just got 6 inches cut off.
Really?
There it is.
You cut your hair.
I cut it over Christmas break. I actually cut this side shorter than this side
On purpose?
on accident because they were just so bad.
Did you cut your own hair?
No, I went to a hair salon.
Or
Okay, I don't have that problem, but I am getting a new hairdo today, completely new.
Dang.
Did you hear Jeremiah?
What?
He goes bald, question mark.
Well, yeah, that's why. See, I mean, I'm
Oh,
getting to the point that this is starting to look more like a comb over than, you know, a hairstyle.
that reminds me of those videos where they're like hairline check.
No, ask him if he's going bald.
You just asked it.
James, did you hear me?
What?
Are you actually gonna go bald?
I have no idea.
No, don't.
I doubt it because I'm going to an actual like person, like not normally I just go to like Supercuts or something.
Oh,
I'm
so you're
going
actually
to-
going to a person, yeah.
Yeah, so like a friend, I'm going the person that does my wife's hair.
Okay.
And then basically, and I've told her this numerous times to go through, I'm like, you got to come up with something. I'm doing whatever you come up with. But yes, in April, I tried the like really, really short and I'm not there yet.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's all I have for us. Is
Okay.
there anything else I can do for you?
No.
Nope.
So we will do these AHA slides each time for these synchronous sessions just to kind of help guide things, give people some ways to participate more anonymously. Or also it helps with the like questions. We'll have more questions next time because we will have more things. So if you want, so you can play around with some of those sorts of things with that. Make sure that works or whatever. All right.
Sounds good.
Other than that, enjoy your day. I'll see you all in a few hours.
Bye.
Bye.